Have you ever wondered how democracy began in Europe? Well, it all started out in Great Britain and worked its way over. This is Great Britain toward democracy in plain English. Great Britain's penny post. It all started in Great Britain when the only way of communication was by mail. The cost of the package was paid by the person receiving it, and the price depended on the weight and distance. This led to unhappy citizens, including Rowland Hill. Rowland Hill had the marvelous idea of prices being lowered to a uniform cost for most letters, which the sender sent regardless of distance. He also suggested the self-adhesive stamp, which showed the package had been prepaid for. Because of this new postal system, this made civilians want to use this way of communication more, and throughout the next decade, the volume of British mail grew exponentially, leading to an increase of government workforce. The Universal Postal System, which is still used today, was created through a treaty in Switzerland, allowing letters to be sent globally. The Second Reform Act of 1867. By the early 1860s, the Reform League, created by John Bright, urged for parliamentary reform. A reform bill written by Lord Russell's Liberal Ministry was created, but soon after, Benjamin Disraeli, leading his own Conservative ministry, introduced a replacement to the Reform Bill. After long debate and change to Disraeli's bill, it finally passed, doubling the number of voters. The passage of this bill was the initial step for Great Britain transitioning to a democracy. In effect, significant numbers of the working class supported Conservative candidates, and overall, Great Britain became dominated by the Conservative Party. Gladstone's Great Ministry from 1868 to 1874. Soon after Disraeli in office, William Gladstone became the new Prime Minister in the elections of 1868. He opposed the Second Reform Bill, seeing he was liberal, and also supported free trade and repeal of the Corn Laws. Before his election, Gladstone had the position of finance minister, where he lowered taxes and government spending. Before his reign, he had been Russell's spokesperson in the House of Commons for Russell's unsuccessful reform bill. Throughout his ruling, purchasing officers' commissions in the army was abolished, and also he removed the Anglican religious requirements for faculty in universities. In 1872, he created the Ballot Act, which established voting by secret ballot. All in all, his most monumental change was the Education Act of 1870, which gave government the responsibility of establishing and running elementary schools. In effect, this led to less religious roles in primary schools. These measures were all made to avoid a democratic state. Disraeli in office from 1874 to 1880. After Gladstone's reign, Disraeli returned to power as Prime Minister in 1874. His priorities were set towards improving the standards of the working class. Although he promised lots, he didn't always follow through. Disraeli passed the Public Health Act, which improved the sanitation of third-class citizens and reassured the state's efforts towards enhancing health and physical well-being. Along with that, the Artisan Dwelling Act of 1875 improved the conditions of housing for the bourgeois. The Irish Question in 1884. Agricultural misfortune and disliked foreign policy caused the second Gladstone ministry to take office in 1880, and in 1884 a third Reform Act took into effect. This act gave male farmers the right to vote. Irish nationalists desired the Home Rule for Ireland. This made Irish control over local government. The Irish question had been addressed by Gladstone in two pieces of legislation before. The Church of Ireland was disestablished in 1869, and Liberal ministry supported the Land Act in 1870. The Church of Ireland was connected to the Church of England, and the Land Act paid Irish tenant farmers who were evicted and gave out loans to potential landowners. The Irish question intensified through the 1870s, and the Irish Land League led to irritation of landlords. Charles Stewart Parnell led the Irish movement for land settlement and Home Rule. Parnell had created a group that would disrupt Parliament to gain awareness about the Home Rule. Gladstone announced his support for the Home Rule in Ireland in 1885. Conservative ministry led by Lord Salisbury ruled briefly. After a short ruling by the Conservative minister Lord Salisbury, Gladstone returned the ministry in 1892. After passing a second Home Rule bill in the House of Commons, it was defeated by the House of Lords. The bill sat there until the 1900s. Finally, the bill passed in 1914, but was suspended during World War I. The penny post first occurred in 1840, and then in 1867 the Second Reform Act was passed while Disraeli was in office. In 1868, Gladstone's Great Ministry first occurred, and then ended in 1874 when Disraeli came into office again. And then it later finished in 1880. In 1884, the Irish question first occurred, and was suspended in 1914 when World War I occurred.